Association, and I am delighted to welcome you to the Centennial Financial Services Dinner. And it is my great pleasure to turn the microphone over to Vonnie Quinn from Bloomberg Markets. Vonnie Quinn.
Thank you, Noel, and thanks everybody. Just officially good evening. I want to, on behalf of Dame Gillian Sackler, Chairman of the Foreign Policy Association, and Noel Lateef, President of the FPA, welcome you all to the 2018 Foreign Policy Association Financial Services Dinner. My name is Vonnie Quinn. I anchor Bloomberg Television's global market coverage daily between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern. And I'll tell you what, the FPA couldn't have chosen a better evening to hold this dinner, right? Today was the very illustration of how geoeconomics impact financial markets, with the potential for tariffs going into effect next week, exacerbating that market sell-off, the Dow obviously down 420 points at the end of the day. Our 6 honorees and their guests then, and many of you to hear it tonight, have had a very, very busy and fascinating day, and we'll have another one tomorrow. So combined, our honorees have decades of experience in international financial markets. I'm not going to count how many decades. I can't wait to hear from them. They all have something really interesting to say tonight, along with those who are introducing them. And of course, our keynote speaker, very lucky and happy to have the Honourable David Malpass, Undersecretary for International Affairs at the Department of the Treasury. A very quick word on the Foreign Policy Association itself, which is celebrating its centenary this year. 100 years of thought leadership for the foreign policy community, and any of you lucky enough to have attended the most recent Irene D. Pritzker lecture will have heard former British Prime Minister Gordon Brown speak when informed the FPA was celebrating its 100th anniversary. The former PM said, and I'm not going to imitate him, "Our experience in the UK was that the first 500 years are the toughest." So a long time to go for the FPA, and we're all happy about that. So, with all of that being said, let's get straight to the program. The recipient of the first medal is Doug Paul, Vice Chairman and Senior Advisor to the Executive Management Group at Credit Suisse. Congratulations, Doug. Here to introduce, and I promise say nice things about him, is President and Chief Executive Officer of the FPA, Noel Lateef.
Thank you, Vonnie, for presiding this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this very auspicious occasion. I am honored that Doug Paul has asked me to induct him into the pantheon of FPA medalists. Doug has been a leader in promoting our mission and in achieving our goals at FPA. Coming up on 2 decades as an FPA director, he exemplifies all that a board member should be. He has helped us gain underwriting support for the Great Decisions television series, hosted numerous FPA lectures, actively participated in key board decisions, and served as a wise counsel on many issues. In 1969, when Doug returned from Vietnam as a highly decorated Green Beret officer, he attended Columbia Business School and upon graduation joined the First Boston Corporation. Early in his career, he was sent to London to help start a European presence for the firm, and that began his involvement with global finance. As First Boston merged its operations into Credit Suisse, Doug spent a significant amount of time traveling to over 40 countries, advising both institutional and sovereign clients, from Turkey to Egypt, Poland to Sweden, Malaysia to China. In addition to his capital markets work, Doug was a member of the Global Fixed Income Operating Committee and the Chairman's Board, running global fixed income distribution. During his long career with Credit Suisse, he has been responsible for a number of landmark transactions in both the public and private securities markets, including the inaugural launch of the mortgage-backed and asset-backed securities markets and the firm's entry into high-yield and emerging markets. He has been an advisor to the U.S. Department of the Treasury and a member of the Fannie Mae National Advisory Council. Doug created a scholarship program to help minority students gain entry into financial services by giving them an opportunity to spend a summer at Credit Suisse, potentially leading to full-time employment. This program now carries the name, the Steps to Success Doug Paul Scholars Program, and after 20 years has enabled over 100 minority students to launch their careers at Credit Suisse. In 2010, Credit Suisse conferred upon Doug its highest award, the Epley Prize for Exceptional Leadership. Today, Doug serves as a vice chairman, senior manager in the executive management group at Credit Suisse, working across the bank on public policy, investment banking, relationship management, and philanthropy, serving on the boards of numerous not-for-profits. I would like to invite Doug and our chairman, Dame Jillian Sackler, to join me for the presentation of the Foreign Policy Association Medal.
The Foreign Policy Association Medal is awarded to Douglas L. Paul in recognition of his outstanding public service and leadership in financial services.
Thank you, Noel, and thank you, Jill. I'm deeply honored to be a recipient of the FPA medal. I join such a distinguished pantheon of people who've received this medal that I'm truly humbled. Dame Sackler and Noel, distinguished guests, fellow Credit Suisse employees, family members, thank you all for coming tonight and being with us at this wonderful event. It's been a privilege for me to serve as a board member for the Foreign Policy Association, and it's been especially exciting to be part of this organization for the Centennial year. The FPA is a very unique educational organization that is as relevant today as it was at its founding 100 years ago. I just returned from a visit to South Africa, and although I visited the country many times and have the privilege of being married to a South African, I found that reading the in-depth article in the Great Decisions magazine brought great clarity to me to the history of the country and the issues that it faces today. I was very fortunate to be in South Africa as Cyril Ramaphosa took over the presidency from Jacob Zuma, giving South Africans great hope for an exciting future for their country under the dynamic leadership of President Ramaphosa. The FPA's original vision as the League of Free Nations Association was focused on supporting Woodrow Wilson's effort to achieve a just peace. And while world peace remains an elusive goal that we all hope to one day we will be able to achieve, it is chilling to remember that the United States military has been deployed in 188 interventions since the end of the Cold War, and we currently have special operations forces deployed in 138 countries doing counterinsurgency and intelligence operations. The world is truly more complex than ever and seemingly growing in disarray. This trend is partly the result of what might be called structural factors: the rise of China, globalization, the emergence of a large number of entities with meaningful capacity and often dangerous intentions, and the failure of regional and international institutions, mostly created after the Second World War, to adjust sufficiently to the new distributions of power and new challenges. In many cases, the gap between the challenge and the ability of the world to come together and manage or regulate it is not just large, but growing. Rising disarray is as well the result of poor policy decisions by a number of administrations in Washington. Understanding what is happening in the world today is a challenge and a vitally important mission. The FPA, developed as an educational organization to study all sides of international questions affecting the United States in a nonpartisan manner, and it continues to be our mission. In fact, with today's world of multi-channel, 24-hour TV news, Vonnie representing one of them, and some of them are quite biased, it should be noted that in the 1940s, the FPA pioneered international affairs radio discussions by broadcasting New York City meetings and weekly talks on a program called The World Today on NBC Radio. Try and imagine a family gathered around a large family radio, listening to The World Today, and then having a family discussion about what they'd learned. In following in this tradition, we should encourage families to watch the Great Decision series and then have discussions on the topic of the day. This will serve the dual purpose of educating a family on world events and bonding the family together as it has substantive discussions about what's happening in the world. I guess I'd like to sum it up by saying less video games and more Great Decisions videos. I remember in grammar school being given a public speaking assignment, the topic of which was, should Red China be admitted to the UN? This assignment fostered great family discussions and debate as I wrestled with my speech. But despite my brilliant 8th grade presentation, it wasn't until 1971, 14 years later, that Red China, over continued objections from the United States, was indeed welcomed into the UN, and of course today serves as a permanent member of the Security Council. But unlike the Cold War, when Russia was the focus of our attention, today there are seismic political and geopolitical events occurring every day, and knowledge of world events and foreign policy has never been more critical. International affairs literacy has never counted for more. Very importantly for me, understanding world events is interwoven with an understanding of the global economy. With the great debate in Washington over international trade, it is important to remember that 23 million jobs in the United States are tied to international trade. Today's announcement by President Trump of tariffs on steel and aluminum places this issue front and center. The greater understanding of the world political landscape allows people to have a more robust dialogue with their representatives in Washington about issues that directly affect them and their friends and neighbors. I spend a great deal of time in Washington talking to legislators and regulators about how current legislation affects the banking industry, and specifically foreign banks such as mine, in the competitive landscape that we navigate every day. Reading the FPA materials and attending their lectures has helped me gain a better understanding of international issues and have a more informed dialogue with legislators in Washington. The FPA mission is inseparable from America's role in the world. Our job is to ensure that through Great Decisions publications, videos, TV programming, teacher training, and foreignpolicyblog.com, we continue to educate and stimulate conversations about the critical issues facing the world today and how they affect the United States and our place in the world. The FPA can look back with pride over the past 100 years and fully recognize that the best is yet to come.